Bangladesh is a country without a government. Dhaka is desperate for government to end chaos, death, mayhem. Day after a massive public uprising toppled Sheikh Hasina's government, the president has dissolved the parliament, clearing the way for elections in the country. For now, the military is in control. The youth that ousted Hasina do not want a military-led government in their country. They want Nobel Laureate Muhammad Yunus to lead the caretaker government. So the question is, what comes next? Who will fill the power vacuum left by Prime Minister's resignation? Who will lead the next government in the crisis-hit country? The situation raises some important questions, but chief among them is the question of, will the student-led revolution bring much-needed stability to Bangladesh, or will crisis spiral to the point of no return? All eyes are on Dhaka. Here's what has happened today. Hours after protesting student leaders set a deadline, President Mohammad Shahabuddin dissolved the parliament. A statement from the President's office also said that Hasina's arch-rival and former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Khaleda Zia, had been freed from house arrest. As the day went on, thousands of jailed protesters were also freed. In a statement, President Shahabuddin said that an interim government would hold elections as soon as possible after consulting all parties and stakeholders. After Monday's chaos, the streets were quiet again on Tuesday. Schools and businesses were shut, and with police nowhere to be seen, the students are acting as vigilantes controlling traffic.
Everyone wants to be a part of this noble social work. I think that's why all of us have come down here to the road.
Garment factories in the country, which supply apparel to some of the world's top brands and are a mainstay of the country's economy, remain shuttered. Amid the uncertainty, Bangladesh has become global companies' next big unknown. For now, it looks like the army has played the cards well. It is talking to the angry youth. Naturally, the attention has shifted to Bangladesh's influential military. Once again, in the history of the country, it is stepping in to clean up the misdeeds of civilian rulers. Today, the protesting student leaders met with the army chief, General Waqar-uz-Zaman. Yesterday, Zaman had appealed to the people, please trust the armed forces. I am taking full responsibility to protect all. He had called for an end to the violence and promised investigation into the deaths of the 300 people killed in the government-led crackdown on demonstrators last month. Zaman held talks with student leaders today. He also held talks with leaders of major political parties, excluding Hasina's long-ruling Awami League, to discuss the way ahead. A lot is still up in the air, but one thing's for certain. The student protesters do not want a return to how things were. Nahid Islam, a key organizer of the campaign against Hasina, said in a video message, and I'm quoting here, any government other than the one we recommended would not be accepted. The coordinators of the student protests have called for the formation of a new interim government with the economist and Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus as its chief advisor. In Dr. Yunus we trust is the message coming from the students. Yunus, who is also known as the banker of the poor, has reportedly agreed to the role. He plans to return to Bangladesh immediately after undergoing a minor medical procedure in Paris. Yunus is also known as the pioneer of the global microcredit movement in Bangladesh. He founded the Grameen Bank, which won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for helping lift millions from poverty. In 2011, Hasina's government had removed him as head of the Grameen Bank, saying that he had stayed on past the legal retirement age of 60. At the time, thousands of Bangladeshis had formed a human chain to protest his sacking. Then in January this year, Yunus was sentenced to 6 months in prison for violations of labor laws. Him and 13 others were also indicted by a Bangladesh court in June on charges of embezzlement of $2 million from Workers' Welfare Fund of a telecoms company he founded. Although he was not jailed in either case, Yunus faces more than 100 other cases on graft and other charges. Of course, he denies any involvement, describing the accusations against him as very flimsy, made-up stories. On Monday, after Hasina resigned and fled the country, he told an Indian broadcaster that the moment had marked the second liberation day for Bangladesh after the 1971 war. In another interview, he said that Bangladesh had been an occupied country under Sheikh Hasina. Regardless of who forms the interim government, there are challenges galore. The interim government will have to focus on an economy that has struggled to gain its footing since the pandemic. It also came under pressure from curfews and recent internet blackouts. The new government may also have to negotiate with the International Monetary Fund as well as other creditors for more cash to bolster its dwindling reserves. The IMF have approved $4.7 billion loan program to Bangladesh last year. Amid the crisis unfolding in Bangladesh, IMF has said that it would continue to support efforts to ensure economic stability. The situation in Bangladesh remains volatile. We're still waiting to hear when the interim government will be formed. What started out in late June as peaceful protests seeking to abolish government jobs quota turned into deadly unrest, with demonstrators seeking to oust Hasina. She had shown little signs of backing down at the time. She had angered the students by calling protesters as Razakars, a term referring to a Bengali militia that supported the Pakistani army. Her crackdown on the protesters has resulted in the worst violence since Bangladesh was founded. The situation is of course still evolving, and what happens next is far from certain. All we can say is that the sooner a government is formed and law and order is restored, the better it is for the South Asian country. The political turmoil in Bangladesh, it's brought the nation to a standstill, with former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fleeing and taking refuge in India. New Delhi is closely watching the situation in Dhaka. Addressing the Indian Parliament, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said India is concerned about the status of the minorities in the nation. Detailing the events that led to the unrest, the Indian Foreign Minister said tensions had been high since the elections in January 2024. Referring to the escalation of violence on the 4th of August, the minister noted that what was particularly worrying was minorities. Their businesses and temples were coming under attack at multiple locations.
Properties of individuals associated with the regime were torched across the country. What was particularly worrying was that minorities, their businesses and temples also came under attack at multiple locations.
On the 5th of August, when the demonstrators continued to protest in Dhaka despite the curfew, he said Sheikh Hasina decided to resign and at very short notice requested India's approval to come to New Delhi. Before addressing the parliament, Dr. S. Jaishankar addressed an all-party meeting as well, attended by prominent opposition leaders. The opposition leaders assured that they stand with the government. Jaishankar said that India is maintaining a wait-and-watch strategy and that the Indian army is also on alert. In the wake of the developments, on the 5th of August, when Hasina landed in India, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a high-level meeting with the Cabinet Committee on Security on the situation in Dhaka. India's border security forces also issued a high alert for its formations along the 4,096-kilometer India-Bangladesh border. Now, to discuss this situation further, we're now being joined by Mr. Shamsher Chaudhary, former diplomat from Bangladesh. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Gravitas. I wanted to begin by asking you, sir, what is the situation in Bangladesh at the moment?
Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts. As you said, that the last 24 hours has been seismic politically in Bangladesh. The departure of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in such a hurried fashion, not even being given a chance to make a farewell speech to the country, to the nation. and having to deliver her resignation. But I have not seen the resignation letter as such. So I don't know whether we need a written resignation or a verbal one is good enough in this case. To the president, from the president's house, she took a airport. Do you know all the details? So what, since then, because of the 15 years of, suffocating situation in the absence of total democracy in the country, no freedom of dissent in the political parties. Yes, they were allowed to hold meetings and all that, but the whole election system was so rigged, was so structured that only Awami League could win, and hence major political parties like BNP boycotted the election because they knew what the outcome would be. So you had basically a non-functional parliament where 90% of the members were from the opposition, were from the Awami League. So there was no serious discussion. It became a rubber stamp that you see in communist countries. I don't have to name them. You know how it happens there. And then came the quota thing, was like a trigger point. Because in 2018, she herself abolished all quota, which was welcomed by the students, and there was no furor after that. But this time, on a writ petition filed by, I don't know who, they said some children of some freedom fighter to the court, questioning the legality of the 2018 decision by the Prime Minister herself, which she did on the floor of the Parliament. Anything decided on the floor of the Parliament automatically assumes a legal status, right? So why did somebody have to call that illegal? I do not know. And then the students, started protesting, and the government filed a thing against the High Court decision at the higher court. What was worrying the students, and why is the government, giving so much time to the High Court? The government Attorney General could always ask the Supreme Court that why did you move the day forward, which they eventually did. But by then the damage had been done, because very slanderous or kind of unpleasant language was used against the students. Well, not against the students, but indicating that should I give preference to, not give preference to the descendants of the freedom fighters and give them to descendants of the Razakars.
Right.
So that was interpreted as calling these protesters Razakars. So, and then the government misinterpreted these protester slogans, saying that they are calling this Razakars. Now, after all this disaffection, a sense of relief, which has turned into kind of lack of control in some parts. So there has been vandalism, which I strongly condemn.
Right.
There has been some, not to the extent that I'm seeing in the Indian media on minorities, because I have spoken to a number of minority groups in my district in Sylhet, for example, which is a large minority community, there are many Hindu temples. There has not been one single incident of this nature. I've spoken to the Hindu chief also. I've spoken to my friends among the Hindus. There has been one or two. But mind you, this persecution of minorities, especially Hindus, is not just now. I mean, this is much less than what happened during the Awami League regime.
Right.
When lands belonging to minorities were taken away by the Awami League for setting up their offices. Temples were attacked in Ramu, in Chittagong and all that, and none of them were seriously investigated.
Right, sir.
So this has raised... Yes, sir.
Sorry to interject, sir. I also wanted to understand, sir, of course, as I mentioned earlier, right now there is no government in Bangladesh. I mentioned in my report as well that it's the students who are acting as vigilantes at the moment. That being said, when can we expect an interim government? What happens next? Where do things go from here?
Well, this thing is just about 24 hours old. And the country is functioning. Shops are opening. People are moving around. The president is very much there, which is the constitutional authority at the moment. And so whatever decisions are being made in the government are being made by the president and in his name, which is very legitimate and very constitutional. So they are working on forming an interim government. The couple of issues which I can see as an outsider, I think the students want an interim government that enjoys their support, that reflects their views.
Right.
In otherwise, they're perhaps, I may be wrong, they're perhaps indicating that we don't want a repeat of the old and tested and failed system to continue. You know, one bad apple being replaced by another bad apple.
All right.
We want something totally new, because this is a new generation, totally new generation. 54 years since the birth of Bangladesh. They didn't even see what happened in 1971.
All right.
They don't know what Pakistan is.
All
So
right.
they are very informed people. They're very informed people. They rely on the social media. They do a lot of
Right.
laptop work and all that. Aware of a lot of things.
All right. Well,
So
Mr. Chaudhary.
we hope something good will come out of it in the end.
Right, of course, that is the hope, Mr. Chaudhary. That being said, thank you so much for joining us on Gravitas with your insights on this. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.